The Light and the Fall, a chronicle of rebellion and redemption. Part 1, The Seal of Perfection, before evil existed. Long before the first human being touched the earth, the heavens were governed by infinite goodness. Everything was perfect. Each angel shone like a reflection of the eternal light, and harmony was the very breath of the universe. Among myriad celestial beings, one stood above all, Lucifer. He was the seal of perfection, full of wisdom and incomparable beauty. Like a masterpiece carved by the Creator's hands, Lucifer radiated a splendor that dazzled the eyes. His presence inspired respect and devotion. God himself described him through the prophet Ezekiel. You were the seal of perfection, full of wisdom and perfect in beauty. You were in Eden, the garden of God. Every precious stone covered you: sardius, topaz, diamond, turquoise, onyx, jasper, sapphire, carbuncle, and emerald. Your tambourines and your pipes were made of gold. You were the anointed cherub who covers. You were perfect in your ways from the day you were created, until iniquity was found in you. Heaven was a living order. On high, the seraphim burned with love and purity, singing without ceasing, Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. The whole earth is full of his glory. The cherubim guarded the secrets of the universe, a shield against any shadow of impurity. Below them, archangels like Michael and Gabriel appeared at decisive moments, fiery messengers who brought the divine message on the blade of obedience. And there were the angels closest to humanity, the watchers of the soul, invisible companions on the journey of creation that was yet to come. In this perfect system, God decided to do something extraordinary. Out of his wisdom and love, he crowned Lucifer with honors no other angel had received. He entrusted him with command of the heavenly realms. His voice, when raised, lit the firmament. It was like a noble flame, guiding the songs and uniting the voices in a single tide of praise. Part 2, The Shadow of Pride. Nothing, however, is born to eclipse the sun. The light that illuminates can, if contemplated incorrectly, blind. The gift God had granted Lucifer also brought the responsibility of humility. For a long time, he was perfect in his ways. His beauty exalted the Creator. His wisdom invited worship. His leadership was service. Until one day, the inexpressible found a place in his heart. It was an almost imperceptible spark, a whisper that did not come from above. What if my light could shine brighter? What if glory did not always need to be in the service of another? And so the beauty that should reflect divine glory began to become a mirror for his own pride. Gabriel, sensing the change, approached gently. Brother, what burden weighs on your heart? Your light is restless. But Lucifer looked away and responded with a restrained smile. There are things that even we do not understand, dear Gabriel. The storm had begun. The presence that once united now became absence. Where there were bridges, distances appeared. The angels missed him in their songs, as if a star had disappeared from the firmament. Heaven remained peaceful, but a tension, subtle as a cold breeze, ran through the assembly of saints. God, who sees all, called Lucifer in sacred silence. His voice ran deep like a river that crosses time. Son, seal of perfection, I perceive that your thoughts are moving away from me. In your heart, ideas rise like walls that separate you from eternity. The desire to understand is noble, but remember, the light I have placed in you is a reflection of my love, not a source of its own. Turn to me and your splendor will grow in truth. Lucifer lowered his eyes. In his soul, however, a flame of incomprehension mixed with pride burned. He responded softly, Lord, I have nothing that is not yours. My light is your gift. How could I dispute with you if I was made by your will? The Creator, with infinite patience, enveloped him in mercy, but his heart, which had contemplated its own image for too long, felt wounded by the invitation to humility. Goodness advises, pride distrusts. Lucifer withdrew with reverence and distance. Part 3. The Rebellion, the Days Past. The Creator, in his long-suffering, gave him time for humility to blossom like a lily in the desert. He called to him again. I see the path you take. It pains me to see your light become shadow. There is still time. Lucifer listened, and his response was a paradox, sincere and divided. I desire to be faithful, he said, and it was true. But in a dark corner of his mind, the seed of pride insisted on growing, as ivy climbs the pillars of a sacred temple. And then the impossible happened. The peace that seemed eternal shattered like glass in a thunderclap. Rebellion burst forth, a tremor in the fabric of reality, a discordant note in the song that never faltered. Even the brightest star can fall into darkness when it forgets the source of its light. The brightness that once reflected the very heart of God began silently to fade into shadow. Scripture declares, "You were perfect in your ways from the day you were created, until iniquity was found in you." At first, it was just a fleeting thought. What if I could sit higher? The prophet Isaiah describes this hidden longing. You said in your heart, I will ascend to heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will sit enthroned on the mount of assembly. I will be like the Most High. He began to meet in secret with angels who had always admired his leadership. They were not the weak or inattentive, but the most beautiful, the wisest. Lucifer promised dignity, freedom, a new horizon for the children of light. But beneath this cloak grew a desire to enthrone himself. He promised a kingdom where no angel would need to bow down, where talents would be celebrated without submission. Some angels began to defend his words in secret. Others, restless, sought comfort from Michael and Gabriel. The words burned like fire. Free will, the sublime gift, was being used to shape the first rebel army in history. A third of the angels, beautiful and powerful, were beginning to lean the wrong way, seduced by promises of greatness. Part 4. The War in Heaven. Michael, alert, prepared his heart for the inevitable confrontation. He knew he would not fight for position, but for love of the one who had created them. The peace that enveloped heaven was about to be completely shattered. The war in heaven reached its climax. There was no more assembly, no more deliberation. There was a clash of forces, flashes of light streaking the firmament like falling stars. The faithful fought not only with power, but with the certainty that they defended the truth of the Creator. Their movements were guided by the love that never abandons. Michael, sword raised, advanced. With each blow, he reminded those who hesitated, loyalty is stronger than pride. Lucifer, shrouded in shadow, responded with fury. His beauty, now distorted, seemed a broken reflection of what it once was. He lunged at Michael, proclaiming, I was the highest among the created. How dare you stop me? But the archangel's response came with the serenity of one who remains under the hand of the Eternal. He who dwells in the heavens is king. No creature can steal the place of the one who has always been. The final clash echoed like thunder. The rebel forces began to waver. Their power was great, but sustained only by pride, and pride has no deep roots. It was then that the command of God himself rang through the heavens, irresistible and incontestable. Rebellion must cease. A wind of glory swept across the field. Lucifer and those who chose to follow him were torn from the luminous presence. They seemed like extinguished stars, plummeting into the void. Peter would later write of this fall. God did not spare the angels who sinned, but cast them down to hell and committed them to caves of darkness. The firmament fell silent, a void remained where once stood choirs of worship, but there was also peace, a conquered peace. Lucifer, now called Satan, experienced the weight of separation. It was not just punishment, it was an irreparable loss of communion with God. In his fall, he planned revenge. If he could no longer inhabit the light, he would seek to obscure it in those who would be created in the Creator's image. Part 5. The Serpent in the Garden. A whirlwind of light separated the unfaithful army from the glorious kingdom. Lucifer and his followers were cast out, precipitated into darkness. It was an exile where the memory of what they had been weighed more heavily than chains. Satan turned his eyes to the plan God was beginning to form, the material world. A bitter determination grew in the enemy's heart to harm the Creator's work, to seduce creation into the same rebellion that had condemned him. The writer of Genesis describes the scene to come. Now the serpent was more crafty than any beast of the field. And he said to the woman, "Has God truly said, 'You shall not eat from every tree of the garden'?" There was the next stage. The battle had not ended with the fall. It had merely changed its setting. The silent narrative of the heavens ended, but a new story began, that of an enemy determined to corrupt and a God determined to redeem. The Creator approached with a voice that mingled pain and tenderness. He knew that the enemy's rebellion now stained the heart of his masterpiece. Adam confessed, Eve told about the serpent, and the Lord declared the consequences. "Because you have done this, cursed are you above all cattle. On your belly you will go, and dust you will eat all the days of your life." And then came the promise, the first spark of hope after the fall. "I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your seed and her seed. He will bruise your head, and you will bruise his heel." Even in the face of human failure, grace was proclaimed. A descendant would come to crush the serpent's head. God made tunics of skin for the man and the woman and clothed them, a silent act full of meaning. An innocent life had to be lost so that their shame would be covered. It was a sign of what the Lamb would do in the future. He drove the man out, and placed cherubim at the east of the Garden of Eden, and a flaming sword that turned every way, to guard the way to the tree of life. Part 6. The Thread of Promise. The garden remained behind, but God's voice was not silenced. The promise given to the woman became the flame that would span the generations. Soon, Cain and Abel were born. Abel brought of the firstlings of his flock, and the Lord respected Abel and his offering. Even after the tragedy of Abel's death, grace continued through Seth. Throughout the centuries, God raised up men and women to keep hope alive. Noah found favor. Abraham was called to be a blessing. Moses freed Israel. The prophets spoke with ever-increasing clarity, "For unto us a child is born, and his name will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God." The thread of promise ran through the centuries. Kings failed, nations strayed, but the word remained. A different king would come to restore what Lucifer's pride and human fall had wounded. As John wrote, "The Word became flesh and dwelt among us, full of grace and truth." Part 7. The Victory. Thus, the script of redemption progressed from Eden to the cross. In the fullness of time, God sent His Son. Jesus walked among us, revealing the Father's goodness. On the cross, He bore the guilt that entered the world since Eden. John declares, "For this purpose the Son of God was manifested, that He might destroy the works of the devil." There, when all seemed lost, the Lamb triumphed. His resurrection sealed Satan's defeat. The Bible points to the enemy's final destiny. The devil, who deceived them, was thrown into the lake of fire and sulfur, and they will be tormented day and night forever and ever. The drama that began in the heart of an angel reaches its conclusion. The pride that sought to usurp the throne ends in absolute defeat. The love that seemed vulnerable remains invincible. And over all this echoes the voice of the Lord, "Behold, I make all things new." The story that began with rebellion ends with restoration. The God who cast out darkness continues to call men and women to live in the light. In Christ, the serpent is defeated, and the invitation remains: walk in the light that never fades.